airbase quiet hours in effect. Control tower is closed. Pilot-operated approach lighting is not available. For weather and additional information, contact Yokota approach on 270.64118.3. Yokota airbase quiet hours in effect. Control tower is closed. Pilot-operated approach lighting is not available. For weather and additional information, contact Yokota approach on 270.64118.3. Yokota airbase quiet hours in effect. Control tower is closed. Pilot-operated approach lighting is not available. For weather and additional information, contact Yokota approach on 270.64118.3. Yokota airbase quiet hours in effect. Control tower is closed. Pilot-operated approach lighting is not available. For weather and additional information, contact Yokota approach on 270.64118.3. Yokota airbase quiet hours in effect. Control tower is closed. Pilot-operated approach lighting is not available. For weather and additional information, contact Yokota approach on 270.64118.3. Yokota airbase quiet hours in effect. Control tower is closed. Pilot-operated approach lighting is not available. For weather and additional information, contact Yokota approach on 270.64118.3. Yokota airbase quiet hours in effect. Control tower is closed.
Good evening. It is 7:15 p.m. on Tuesday, July 29th, 2025. You're watching Houstonic.live, a research archival drug overdose awareness show brought to you by someone that was in the data storage industry as both an engineer, a competitive intelligence analyst, product marketing person, specifically in the data backup and archival industry, although I did a lot of high-end tier 1 storage, EMC, Dell, NetApp Corporation, and so on. I also had a chance to work with some supercomputers at Mercury Computer Systems, which was pretty cool, but I was actually going through a phase then where I didn't know if that's what I wanted to keep doing. But anyways, as I've have 20-something years in that industry and a lot of skills with respect to data collection, archival, and analysis, competitive intelligence analysis, I've been applying those to this new realm and to this recent career of the last 6 years, I guess, where I've been producing this show. And I was compelled to do this show because of issues related to drug addiction, which were impacting my family, as well as chronic fatigue, which I used to just use interchangeably with Lyme disease, but we've learned much since then. And given the fact that just several months after I started to stream, which you should be skeptical of, you should go, well, that's odd, because I would say it was odd if someone else just started to do a show right before the pandemic. I say that stuff is odd. Admittedly, I left my job, my full-time job, nice cushy job with bonuses and stock options and health insurance and all kinds of other goodies to do this. Shake a can. And sometimes I break even. It's amazing. Houstonic.live or HoustonicITS.com. There's a support tab up in there. Patreon, PayPal. I'm not very good at correspondence, but you know what you get. I'm 6 years in, 1,330 episodes. Full-length episodes, some of them multiple hours. Short-length episodes. The largest independently maintained Wikipedia-like archive of just raw information in the world. Tens of thousands of hours invested into it, and work which is definitely right now pushing the needle. It's reaching in, it smashed the glass, it grabbed the needle, and it's just running away with it right now. And as other people try to catch up, very few people are in this fight with me with respect to having made a decision to go all in with their life and even put their family on the line. As far as financial security goes, now include Jonathan Cooey, a PhD. We're not the same job, but he's another person that came at it from a different angle. And thank goodness he's here also doing his fighting for our country, hoping all people fight for their communities and for their countries. You want to talk about moving the needle and talk about Jonathan Cooey. This video was sent to me earlier today. Dr. Sherry Tenpenny is now being hoisted as, I guess, maybe to make Suzanne Humphreys the flavor of the week, is sputtering out because she was obviously unable to correctly associate the outbreak of polio with the introduction of intramuscular injections for using hypodermic syringes for the administration into the muscles of vaccine products. An idea that people thought would be a good idea because starting around 1870, 1880, they started to inject morphine into the muscles, into the body. They injected morphine into the body after realizing that, well, one, you could actually perhaps have locally administer the pain therapy, if you have a cut or a bruise or if you need to do a surgery. But also they learned that you get more of the morphine if you inject it. Why waste good morphine? So America's first opioid epidemic was really back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and they were injecting morphine. That was the big win of the hypodermic syringe, more drugs, more morphine. And given the understanding at the time, someone came up with the idea that, well, if I could get more of that yummy, delicious goodness of the morphine by injecting it, then it just stands to reason that if I inject a vaccine as opposed to just rubbing it into a wound, it's going to work that much better. I'll get more of the vaccine. I'll be more invulnerable. That's what they thought. Morphine injection, better. Therefore, vaccine injection would be better. That was the thinking. Now, they kept doing the smallpox vaccine the way they were doing it. I don't see evidence that they tried to change the smallpox vaccine, but the smallpox vaccine, really the first worldwide known vaccine, with its introduction and its encouraged use around the world, does coincide with dramatically improved sanitation conditions. So it's hard to really pull the data apart. We don't need to even discuss how effective the smallpox vaccine really was. Also, the skin, where it's administered, is an immune barrier. It is responsible for determining how the inside connects with the outside, and so on. So it makes sense. However, muscles are not designed to protect against the elements in abundance. It's one thing to get a cut. It's another thing to just suddenly squeeze a whole lot of bacteria or toxins into a muscle. It's an unnatural thing, and they're not designed to be able to handle that. But anyways, the idea came from morphine use. So, if you go through U.S. newspapers, as we've shown here, and as Suzanne Humphreys has been unable to show, there is a 100% correlation with the occurrence of the phrase child paralysis, infantile paralysis in U.S. newspapers with the increased use of hypodermic syringes to administer vaccines, any vaccine, intramuscularly. But also, it's more than just vaccines, antitoxins, and other medicine, as more medicines, things beyond just maybe a simple vitamin or morphine, as things that were more complicated were being injected into muscles, intramuscular injection. Doesn't matter if you call it a vaccine. Doesn't matter if you call it soda. It doesn't matter what you call it. If it's a complex set of biological materials, foreign materials being injected into a muscle, it's bad. Just because you say, well, what the heck, let's call it a vaccine, that doesn't mean it's good. I know what's going to happen if I drink a gallon of coolant. If I just said, let's call it a vaccine, it doesn't mean it's going to work any differently. It's still coolant. Don't drink it. Better yet, don't inject it either. That's not a good thing. So, Humphreys unable to demonstrate that. Absolute failure. She blames that on a whole bunch of other things, and it even gives into the polio must have been a gain-of-function virus out of a laboratory in New York City, blah, 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 blah. So now, Tenpenny, she is now doing the circuit, and recently she was on this Alex whatever show. I can't keep them all straight. You got the silly palm trees and the weird music and, all this new age symbolism and so on. Now she's doing the tour. Something very interesting is said during this show, and it's going to lead me to talking about a Dr. Hilary Koprowski and one of the people that studied under him, someone who's one of the most important people in understanding the fake, the engineered narrative, counter-narrative discussion of vaccines, immunizations, and so on, and that man is Paul Offit. We're going to get there, but let's listen to Sherry Tenpenny and the horrible introduction music. All this clip art. I'll give him that. I actually have to turn the bass down a little.
Dr. Sherry Tenpenny, I don't want to say the man, the myth, the legend, the woman, the myth, the legend. So when I first started questioning vaccines back in 2016, just after I commissioned as an officer in the Army, graduated from West Point, and was fully indoctrinated into a government paradigm, series of events happened with my family that led me to start questioning things with respect to health. And when I started questioning vaccines, some of the first people that I came across were you, Dr. Hilary Koprowski. Shout out to Dr. P. Love him. And then I think it was Dr. Tony Bark at the time. And rest in peace to Dr.
I think it was Tony Bark.
Tony Bark. She did a lot of incredible work in this paradigm. But I want to give you a lot of...
He said Tony Bark. Tony Bark, one of the pioneers in helping people question immunization. And I don't mean all immunization is bad. I mean, the data doesn't add up. What's really going on? Tony Bark, who was the quintessential person of incredible health, beautiful woman, did all the right things. They killed her. I think they gave her a transfection agent somehow that caused, how would you say, the junction in the stomach and the esophagus, esophageal cancer. I think they found a way to give her something which would basically cause cancer and a transfection in her digestive system. And somehow I think she consumed that in 2019. And then after the chemo, she died in early 2020. Interesting, because another person that caught the esophageal cancer at the same time was John Wolfe, Dr. John Wolfe. He was only in his 50s too. Primary author of the paper that Robert Malone takes credit for. And John Wolfe also, he went through the treatments and he died early in the pandemic as well. So two of the biggest problems for maintaining the current false narrative, Tony Bark, John Wolfe, very smart people, very, very well spoken. At the top of their fields, they were both in the way. One was in the way of Robert Malone. The other one was in the way of Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Children's Health Defense. And they both got esophageal cancer at the same time. Neither one smoked. They both ate well. They were both incredibly fit. And then they both died at pretty much the same time. What are the odds of that? Other than zero? Zero. Anyways, nobody mentions Tony Bark. Nobody mentions the beautiful, beautiful, sexy Tony Bark. She had a PhD. She was head of pediatrics ER at Rush Hospital. The one, that series ER was modeled after. She got fed up with the system. She looked into it. She was learning more. Yeah, she did a lot of naturopathic stuff. But she also encouraged, look, you have to do natural healing. You have to actually use your body in order for it to be healthy. You can't just, take a bunch of medicines and have good health. Anyways, Sherry Tenpenny doesn't say anything in response to that. Why doesn't she go, wow, yeah, Tony Bark, let me tell you a Tony Bark story? Nothing. You don't think she would know about Tony Bark? Well, Tony Bark, here we are. This is the movie The Silent Epidemic, The Untold Story of Vaccines. Director Gary Null. And let's look at the stars of this movie, 2013. Nancy Banks, she's still alive. Tony Bark. Mary Holland. Mary Holland didn't say anything when Tony Bark died. She still doesn't memorialize her death at all. Brian Hooker. I don't think Brian Hooker memorializes Tony Bark at all. Why not? She would have been the real star of Children's Health Defense. Susan Humphreys. She did a movie with this movie also with Tony Bark. She doesn't mention Tony Bark. Meryl Nass. Meryl Nass did a movie with Tony Bark. She never mentions Tony Bark. Tetiana Obukanchich. She's been on panels with James Lyons Weiler. She did a movie with Tony Bark. She doesn't mention Tony Bark. Vera Sharav. She did a movie with Tony Bark. She never mentions Tony Bark. Sherry Tenpenny. She did a movie with Tony Bark. She never mentions Tony Bark. Andrew Wakefield. He did a movie with Tony Bark. He never mentions Tony Bark. None of these people. None of them. Gary Null. None of them. I'm telling you what, if I did a movie with someone, if I did work with someone who is considered to be a hero, someone that actually comes up early in the conversation with this Alex, and I'm not sure Alex knows what he did. Now, either Alex here is only mentioning Tony Bark because they need to pacify Jay and myself, because we've been saying that everyone's trying to forget about her. That's a possibility. Another possibility is that he knows of her and he just doesn't know. Now, I'm not trying to let anyone off the hook, but it's easiest for someone to maintain deceptiveness if they don't know they're lying. So it's a lot easier to keep people dishonest and maintaining a false narrative if they don't know it's false. I imagine it's hard to lie all the time. I'm certainly not someone who never tells lies. I tell little fibs, stupid fibs, which are probably some of the worst ones, you know? Hey, Mark, did you go in my snack drawer last night and finish the Lara bars? No. See, that would be me lying, right? I do stuff like that. I actually get on Amazon. I hope I can order another box before she notices. Anyways, so I'm a flawed person. But they mentioned Tony Bark. He mentions Tony Bark. Sherry Tenpenny will go on to not mention Tony Bark. I mean, how about a moment of silence for Tony Bark? You don't have to give the whole interview about Tony Bark. Talk about her a little bit. She was the real deal. Mary Holland didn't have a chance of being seen as any type of a leader at all with Tony Bark. Mary Holland, in spite of the fact that she has much bigger wrists and a more masculine neck, and kind of looks like Bill Gates when she has her glasses on, and could probably beat a lot of guys arm wrestling. I'm not saying anything, but in spite of that, in spite of her larger physical stage presence and height, even though she wears flats and so on and so forth, if you're a guy, your eyes go straight to Tony Bark. You're like, wow, that is a beautiful woman. Holy moly. What factory did that one come out of? Anyways, no. So this is an example of how just a few shows, self-made shows with people who have other responsibilities throughout the day, and particularly me, push the needle, grab the needle, break the needle, run away with the needle. We are making these changes. I'm pretty sure that wouldn't have happened. Someone might have said to mention the name. Matter of fact, that now I'm thinking it through, that would probably be the most plausible thing. Someone says, hey, remember Tony Bark? You should throw her name out there. Because he says, I think Tony Bark. Let's just go over the way he said it. I think Tony Bark, I think.
Missioned as an officer in the Army, graduated from West Point, and was fully indoctrinated into a government paradigm. Series of events happened with my family that led me to start questioning things with respect to health. And when I started questioning vaccines, some of the first people that I came across were you, Dr. Hilary Koprowski, shout out to Dr. P, love him. And then I think it was Dr. Tony Bark at the time, and rest in peace to Dr. Tony Bark. She did a lot of incredible work in this paradigm. But I want to give you a lot.
Now that I'm watching it again, I don't think he really knows. So I think someone told him, mention Tony Bark. He might have seen her once. Matter of fact, I'll bet you he didn't know that she was even dead. Tony Bark. Oh, she died? Oh, I didn't know about her. You should mention Tony Bark. Okay. I think Tony Bark. She did some pretty impressive work. That's the best you can say? She did some pretty impressive work? She was kind of interesting? That's all you can say? And then nothing will be said after that? There's no way that he made this whole set and he's doing all the audio and he does the intro and he arranges the guests. Where's his studio? This Tenpenny is sitting on the other side of the studio. This isn't a webinar. She flew there. Plane tickets. She had to pack bags, check in her baggage, get a hotel room, rental car. Thousands of dollars were spent just getting her and her neck scarf into that seat for this interview. Thousands of dollars. More money was spent to get Tenpenny into that seat for this interview, then I made profit over the last 6 years on this program. Think about that. Well, why don't you interview people? And of course, yeah, you don't have to have people travel. I know that. Point, though, is where does that money come from? What is he selling, mugs? How does that happen? It doesn't happen organically. This is fake and arranged. It's narrative control. So, Tony Bark, esophageal cancer. Narrative control because it's Mary Holland, who is now at the head of Children's Health Defense, along with Wakefield, who doesn't mention Tony Bark, and Vera Sharaff, who doesn't mention Tony Bark, Sherry Tenpenny, who doesn't mention Tony Bark, Scott Ratner, who doesn't mention Tony Bark, Meryl Nass, who doesn't mention Tony Bark, Suzanne Humphreys, who doesn't mention Tony Bark, Brian Hooker, who doesn't mention Tony Bark, and Mary Holland, who doesn't mention Tony Bark. And oh, by the way, Mary Holland doesn't mention Brandy Vaughn. Brian Hooker doesn't mention Brandy Vaughn. Susan Humphreys doesn't mention Brandy Vaughn. Meryl Nass doesn't mention Vandy Braun. Tatiana doesn't mention Brandy Vaughn. Scott Ratner doesn't mention Brandy Vaughn. Vera Sharaff doesn't mention Brandy Vaughn. Sherry Tenpenny doesn't mention Brandy Vaughn. Andrew Wakefield doesn't mention Brandy Vaughn. And Polly Tomey doesn't mention Brandy Vaughn. None of them do. How can your heroes, your colleagues, die? And Brandy Vaughn was definitely murdered with some fentanyl-laced medication in her bathroom. No one mentions it. Just, we're not going to mention that name again. For real? They are still crying about Andrew Wakefield losing his license like, 1,000 years ago. But Brandy Vaughn was murdered in 2020. They won't even mention it. Let's never mention her again. Half of these people were doing shows within a week of Brandy Vaughn's death. Didn't mention it. No R.I.P. No, gee, that was sad. No, boy, I'm going to throw my money into an investigation. Nothing. They couldn't even spell her name right in the one-page memorial that they had on the Children's Health Defense site. How sad is that? Almost makes you wonder if Children's Health Defense threw a couple of dollars into the bucket of kill Brandy Vaughn with this money. Necessary because now at their head is Mary Holland. Quite masculine looking. Gotta say, a lot of masculine looking people running Inovio, masculine people running Eros, a lot of masculine women running Sister of Hazeltine. It's kind of weird. A lot of XXI, wow, now I'm getting crazy. XXY looking people who might be interested in genetics. But anyways, let's not go there. That's too much of a conspiracy theory. So Mary Holland, and Mary Holland is the arch enemy of Paul Offit. So it's Offit and Holland in their stupid arranged fights. One just wants safer vaccines, and the other one says all vaccines are, of course, safe. No interesting arguments. They don't go anywhere. Nothing's resolved. And they're both telling a lot of truths, and they're both mushing with lies. Nothing happens. But Paul Offit gets positioned the right way and has the right opposition to play with because of Mary Holland. So Paul Offit is a person who matters. There's an interesting interview with Paul Offit from the year 2013. I'm sure this is a condensed interview. Paul Offit, Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. This is a 2013 interview, and it's on downstreamcolumn.com. Now, Paul Offit is the hero of people who do podcasts and who show up in Congress and promote vaccines, childhood vaccines, the childhood vaccine schedule, and so on and so forth. He's still very busy at it. He's been doing it for years. He claims he had a little bit of polio 90 years ago. I don't even know how that's possible. He was born after the polio vaccine. It's very confusing. But let's not get too deep into the details on that. And, of course, that's what motivated him. But here's an interview, and several questions are asked him of Paul Offit here. First, and before I get into them, I also wanted to remind you, okay? And if I go to my page for Hilary Koprowski, that's Houstonic.live or HoustonicITS.com, and the letters up above, click on the K, scroll down to Koprowski, that's K-O-P, M-N-O-P, Hilary Koprowski, born 1916. He passed in 2013, lived well into his 90s. You'll see that Hilary Koprowski, who we're going to talk a lot more about in this show here, sure enough, was someone that Paul Offit worked for. So Paul Offit, okay, the man who is the direct opposition of Manly Hans Holland, Dr. Manly Hans Holland. I just thought of that. That's pretty good. And Manly Hans Holland only gets the job because, of course, Tony Bark is dead. You know that, right? If Tony Bark did not get the esophageal cancer from something that she ate or something that she breathed in, Manly Hans Holland would not have been able to run Children's Health Defense. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. would not have been in a position to run for President of the United States of America if Tony Bark didn't die. Tony Bark needed to die to clear a path for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. There's a motive for you. So now that Manly Hans Holland is lifted, she can have her, her fake fights with Paul Offit that really go nowhere. Just trying to put that into context here. And thank goodness, Sherry No Penny, here she is on this show here, being flown in, thousands of dollars being wasted. And at least the host, Alex Zeck, asked about Tony Bark. Thank goodness someone remembers her. Or I should say, this is because Jonathan Cooey, PhD, Giga Biological, and myself are basically giving everything we have and clicking the button on live streaming as often as possible and putting as much stuff out there as possible and driving people batshit crazy because we are on a course to really see this whole world of how are we going to invert our sovereignty, our rights into things which we allow. How are we going to turn people into medical experimental test animals being used for data collection without them knowing it? This is what we're on to. And the art of vaccines is in there. So going back now that we know Paul Offit worked for Koprowski, we're going to talk about again in a little bit. We mentioned yesterday, Koprowski, isn't it interesting that he came out with an oral polio vaccine? Isn't it interesting how Hilary Koprowski was interested in an oral anthrax vaccine? That's interesting, isn't it? It's almost as if he knows that things should get into the body through the digestive system. If you were to be asked, what is better, to eat a sandwich, put it in your mouth, bite by bite, chew it, swallow it, or to mush up the sandwich and inject it into your muscle? I mean, if you just mush up the sandwich and inject it right into your muscle, you're going to get more of that delicious goodness. Oh, that's right. Your body can't use it because the only way nutrients are meant to get into your body is by eating it. Huh. That's pretty crazy. Wow, I didn't know you needed to be a PhD and have like 1,000 degrees to figure this stuff out. Things get into your body by eating them. Or you get air by breathing it in. This is the way stuff happens. You just don't inject things. The injection of morphine, a pure, simple substance. Well, first off, we're not designed for that either. Okay, but it does just so happen that if a large quantity of a substance like morphine is injected into a muscle, it will find its way throughout the whole body, and it's not going to be filtered nearly as much as it would if you ate it. That doesn't mean you take that stupid concept and apply it to chicken parmesan and salads, tacos, milkshakes. You just don't start grinding up all your food and injecting it just because morphine you can inject. In the late 1800s, this is what they thought. They made that leap, and it was a stupid idea. And isn't it interesting how Hilary Koprowski was given hints that oral vaccines might be better because it's the natural route, the natural avenue of getting stuff into the body. He actually thought that the earlier generations of rabies vaccines were causing polio-like symptoms, childhood paralysis, and that it would be better if it was ingested. Wow. Also, on full display here is a lesson for you. Can you see, on my program, I've spoke about Hilary Koprowski on and off for 3-4 years or more right now, maybe 5. I think he first came onto my radar as someone of historical significance back in the year 2000. And you know why I was never able to really appreciate the simplicity of Koprowski's interest in oral vaccines? You know why? Because I saw Koprowski, I saw a picture of him, I saw a little bit of data on him, and I took Koprowski's name and I put it into a column that was titled Bad Guy. My prejudgment of Koprowski, based upon some factors, and he still might be a bad guy. You know, if his kids are listening to it, he's not out of the woods, okay? But the fact that I put him into this bad guy column meant I stopped learning about him. I stopped seeing things because I was now no longer analyzing and I was working with a prejudgment. And this is my lesson for you. This is where most people on the internet who are trying to do research fail. They fail because they put people into good boxes and bad boxes. They put things into good lists and bad lists. And once something goes into there, they can no longer see any contrasting information. Nor can they actually learn about. Now, maybe oral vaccines are terrible, okay? But either way, I couldn't see it. I wasn't reading about it because I already figured out that I knew everything I needed to know. Bad guy. And now you see like the either Fox News, and look, mainstream does as well. Trump is just evil. Trump is evil. That's what they say. Evil, worst man alive. Nobody can learn anything else. I'm sorry for the many people who watch mainstream because Trump is evil, and that's all they know. You don't need to know any more details. Now, is Trump a horrible person? I don't even need to back it up one way or the other or defend him. The point, though, is you can't learn anything else once you already have all of the motives understood. Motive is so important in understanding things. If you lead with an analysis of somebody or something with a motive, you will almost never learn anything more after that. Once someone is told and convinced Trump is evil, they will never learn anything more beyond that. How is it that almost nobody on mainstream media or who hates Trump will ever mention the drug epidemic? It does 1 million opioid deaths, drug overdose deaths over this last 15 years, 600,000 drug overdose deaths of all causes in the last 5 years. These numbers are not enough to get their attention. It wouldn't matter if it went up to 5 million over 5 years. The point is they can't see anything right now beyond Trump is bad. That's it. And it's the same thing on the other side right now. Now you see these positions about the Epstein thing right now is a great example of it. But now Trump had pictures of Epstein, and he wrote Epstein a card and went to a party or something else. Now, Trump is evil. That's it. Trump evil, according to Alex Jones. Trump, DC, evil. You don't need to know anything more. Fauci, evil. You don't need to understand any of the details of Fauci's life, his background. You don't need to understand how he was put into that position and about how he had to endure in that position for an additional 20 years because of 9/11. You can't learn anything new because once the motive is already established and believed, that's it. All the other facts just can't be seen. And I wasn't seeing or appreciating Koprowski's interest in pursuit of oral vaccines because Koprowski was in my bad column. I still do this mistake, by the way. I still have all of these prejudgments in my head. But I'm trying to encourage you, if you watch my show, you probably want to do similar research. You probably want to be an analyst. And you should, don't try to prove me wrong. You should be trying to prove yourself wrong. If you try to prove someone else, you just wind up getting into a pissing fight. Nothing is learned. You have to question yourself. And one of the reasons why people fail at questioning themselves, amongst many, okay, is that they've already made assumptions that they don't even know. I made an assumption, Koprowski, bad guy. That's it. And once that was made, I didn't even know that I made a decision that needed revisiting. I didn't even know it. There's an example of me getting an F on Koprowski, a big fat F. D minus, maybe. But I think the grade I deserve is an F. Now we're changing that. Now, this doesn't mean, now he's good. Now, all we should do is look at the wonderful goodness, the heavenly goodness of Koprowski and everything he did. I don't know, but now I can learn. Now that I no longer have that motive boxing me, and I can learn. So that's my analyst lesson for today. So let's go to this interview with Paul Offit here. I can't believe I'm already 47 minutes in. I got good energy tonight. I slept a little bit last night anyways. I'm not going to read all the questions and answers. 2013 interview. So, question 2. What do you think were the biggest factors that led to the anti-vaccine movement? He goes right into what? Vaccine mandates. Vaccine mandates. Really? Really? You think that's the big problem, a vaccine mandate? Wrong answer. Now, Mary Holland, Manly Hands Holland, this is what she wants it. A medical freedom. Okay, let's say something controversial, okay? If someone doesn't get a vaccine and it's a certainty that they're going to die, and if someone doesn't get a vaccine and it's a certainty that it's the equivalent of going into a mall, wielding an axe, and having a fully loaded ME460, then you know what? Maybe we should mandate them. The question of whether or not to mandate them is actually based upon what they actually do and how much protection they provide. Shouldn't it be? However, though, it's just totally vague. You know, of course, people have very decisive opinions one way or the other, but that answer has never arrived. Matter of fact, we're just encouraged to focus on the mandates. The mandates should be way downstream from understanding what the heck is actually being done here, what are the risks, and what are the actual benefits. The mandates should be way downstream from that. This is arguing over seatbelts when they haven't even invented the wheel yet. Question 3. You don't think that they don't talk about how important the topic of intramuscular injection is all the time? Look at this question. Question. We are working, to Paul Offit, 2013, studied under Koprowski. Question. We are working on a low-cost device that is used with a syringe. Its use results in a substantial increase in the intradermal ID injection success while requiring minimal training in the MAN-2 technique. I don't know what that is, but whatever. I don't need to. The current use of ID intradermal vaccination is limited to BCG and the rabies vaccine and TB tuberculosis testing. Would you please suggest vaccines in development that would likely benefit from a simple intradermal or ID injection device? Paul Offit's answer. The intradermal site is rich in dendritic cells and consequently an excellent site for inducing immune responses. That's an answer from Paul Offit that says that he knows the immune barrier is the skin. It's not the muscle. Paul Offit knows. Paul Offit actively defends intramuscular injection, knowing full well that it's not right. Now, why he's defending it, I'm not really sure yet. I suspect, I have speculation, that they are trying to kick the can as long as possible until eventually they have the data centers, the computers, the data collection, and whatever medicine and food is necessary to be able to exercise as much input into humans and get as much data out of humans as possible to facilitate the continuation of the Human Genome Project. That's what they're trying to do. And I believe it is known that there is so much potential information to be gained from intramuscular injection that they don't want to give it up. They also know that they can't risk people having a gap thinking that, most vaccines kind of didn't really do what we thought they did. They need people to continue to believe in them. Maybe it's to get to the personalized medicine part, which better facilitates the future of the reverse engineering the Human Genome Project. I'm not really sure. But that's the wonderful part, okay? As an analyst, we have speculation. We don't need to say it's definitely this. I'm leaning one way or another. But the fact that I don't know, maybe it makes me less helpful to you. But it also means that as an analyst, I'm still doing my job over here. Paul Offit knows. He knows the immune barrier is the skin. It's not the muscle. He goes on to say, so one could reasonably argue that the site would be excellent, intradermal, with the exception of oral vaccines, like the rotavirus or oral polio or live attenuated viral vaccines, measles, mumps, rubella, or varicella. Interesting. So oral vaccines. So he's allowing for the oral vaccines. And in fact, I did not know this until like 3 hours ago. The rotavirus vaccine developed by Paul Offit is an oral vaccine. This means that Hilary Koprowski pushed the system by showing that an oral polio vaccine would work. And what it means to work, I don't mean my definition of what it's doing and why it works is different than theirs, but whatever the case. And Paul Offit, the opposition of Manly Hands Holland over here, he is also a developer of an oral vaccine. I didn't really appreciate that. It's been in my face for 5 years. I get an F in Paul Offit. You know why? Because I just put him in bad column. I still, honestly, find the guy to be quite annoying, okay? But there's more going on with Paul Offit than just, he's a bad guy who wants money. He just wants to help the pharma companies make money so he can podcast in his third story loft in his McMansion somewhere. I think there's a little bit more to Paul Offit than that. But I've been unable to see any of it because Paul Offit, bad column. He knows. But he's still defending the injected stuff. But he knows. Now, okay, so here's the question. It was question 6. Paul Offit, 2013. Which up-and-coming vaccine technologies do you think show the most promise? Paul Offit's response. My fantasy vaccine technology would be microencapsulation. There is no reason why all vaccines couldn't be given by mouth. There needs to be like some epic music playing here. Epic music time. I don't know what it would be. Why is Paul Offit thinking that vaccines should be administered by the mouth? It's almost as if how to administer vaccines and how to communicate with the cells of the human body of a living human and get data out of them is more important than protecting people against infectious disease. It's almost as if vaccines and immunology is a gateway for using living human beings as experimental test animals and as animals to collect data from without them knowing it. People aren't going to sign up to live in a cage and be jabbed with stuff and be monitored. We will never, ever, ever have a truly captive human population that we can just chew through like monkeys and mice. So how are we going to advance the science? How are we going to advance our understanding of the human genome? How are we going to ever get in control of the evolution of the human species if we don't have any humans to experiment on? We need people to become experimental test animals without them knowing about it. They still need to have cars and washing machines and watch movies and be able to, do whatever their hobbies are. They still need to be able to order takeout food and, date and have children or watch porn all day or whatever it is they want to do. And without them knowing it, they need to be as convinced as possible that they are still living a normal life. They can't know that they are actually virtually in a matrix of tubes connected up to them that are injecting things and monitoring outputs. The moment people realize that they are experimental test animals, possibly even could be killed in order to gain data, people are going to want a little bit of return on their risks. And the system right now doesn't want people to get those returns. Unfortunately, for the powers that be, whatever that is, okay, unfortunately for them, they need the one thing that only everyday people can provide, and that is the truth and access to their bodies. That's really it. They want people to think that there's an agenda out for depopulation. And you know what? Just like putting Koprowski into the bad guy column caused me to not be able to learn all of this amazing depth about Koprowski and now Paul Offit, the very fact that there are monsters, and there I'm prejudging, okay? But in this case, I'm having some fun with it, though. But people who take this monstrous action of encouraging people who are on the internet trying to figure out what's going on to think that all of this stuff, all of this medical issue, pandemics, vaccines, is all a depopulation agenda to just kill people. They push this out there because they want people to believe that. Because once people believe that, and there are millions of people in my own country right now that think that COVID is just a great big plan to kill people. That's what they believe. They believe that so deeply and thoroughly that they cannot see anything else that I'm doing here or Jonathan Cooey is doing here. Or even the work that Joe Marshall, the Liberty Perspective, he's trying to show how world communism, global governance is connected to the Human Genome Project. None of this stuff can happen because Depop, just as I could not see as plain as the great big Jewish nose on his face, Koprowski, his pursuit of oral polio vaccines, oral vaccines in general, I could not see it because Koprowski was in the bad column. Couldn't see it. 5 effing years it's been in front of me. I could not, and I'm as much as ashamed as I am of myself. Yeah, not really ashamed, but it's like, I made that mistake again. Okay, you know why I'm figuring this out first, and probably most of you aren't, is because I spent time to prove me wrong. I attacked my judgments. I attacked my own research. And eventually, my idea to put Koprowski into the bad guy column, it became evident that was my mistake. And now, because I've smashed that, we're learning all kinds of other amazing things. The way to be the first with the next best idea, the next best understanding of how things are, is to destroy your own ideas first, because that will encourage you to come up with the next best list of speculations and hypotheses about what's going on and where things should rank. But you can only get there. You can only lead if you attack yourself first. Anyways, so yeah, it sucks, but you know what? It also shows a successful move on my behalf. Going back, question. Which up-and-coming vaccine technologies, Paul Offit, 2013, do you think show the most promise? Answer. My fantasy vaccine technology would be microencapsulation. There's no reason why all vaccines couldn't be given by mouth. All. He said all. He said all. He said all. All. This is a guy who's thought about it. Now, why, if you have the old motto, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. If the old vaccines have saved so many stinking lives and are so powerful and effective, why would you change them? He seems very willing to consider the possibility of completely changing the way they're designed and administered, things which I thought worked perfectly. Why would you make this change if there's nothing to gain? It's almost as if Paul Offit knows that there's a lot of problems with intramuscular injection. However, just like if you eat a sandwich, if you eat a Subway, roast beef sandwich, you're not going to find roast beef floating around in the veins. Doesn't work like that. Digestive system breaks things down. It results in only certain things being passed through the membranes and getting into the body. You can't just eat a vaccine and have the vaccine wind up in the body. They just don't know how to do it. Now, morphine, on the other hand, you can. However, much of the morphine will be filtered out if you ingest it versus inject it. You see how simple it is, ingestion versus injection. And Brandy Vaughn said it, and she was murdered in her bathroom. I've read the report. They did not do the proper toxicology. The way she died, the breathing, etc. That's a fentanyl overdose. That's someone that could have been saved with Narcan. And any midget murderous bastard that's not willing to admit that, it has what's coming to them. I'm sorry. You're going to get yours someday. She was murdered. Plain and simple. By a trusted friend probably, who said, hey, I've noticed you're gaining some weight, Brandy Vaughn. I know the stress and not having money anymore sure is tough. And you can't trust anyone. Here's some gummies. Why don't you take these gummies, keep some in your bathroom. Take one in the morning if you're having a hard time getting going in the day. And I bet you one in the middle of the bottle was probably had fentanyl in it, enough to kill her. And her child, who saw her dying, thought that she was just tired at first or a little bit under the weather, didn't know to call the hospital in time. And they probably didn't give her Narcan because she's not a drug user. That's where we're at right now. Another person murdered in order so that Manly Hands Holland and the rest of the crowd can continue to control the narrative. Microcapsules could be constructed to survive the acid protease environment of the mouth and stomach. See? They're trying to make things to survive the digestive process and get to a point where it can then actually work with the proper cell types and maybe even permeate the barriers between the different parts of the intestines and the body. Isn't that amazing? It's almost as if they all know intramuscular injection is a big problem. I'm not really sure when they're going to stop kicking the can on it, though. I honestly don't know. We can speculate about that. We don't need to have that answer. It's enough to know. It is a game changer to know that Paul Offit is not just some dude with weird hair and a third-story, foyer somewhere making big money supporting pharma. He worked for Koprowski. He knows vaccines need to be done orally. He knows that for some effed up reason, he knows or believes or has been convinced to believe that what he's doing right now is for the betterment of all of mankind for somehow or another. And he's playing a script. And I'll bet you Manly Hans Holland is on the same script. It's all coordinated. They believe in this script so deeply that they're willing to be quiet when a mother is murdered in her bathroom with fentanyl, just so that people stop talking openly about ingestion versus injection. And everyone is so caught up right now thinking Trump is evil. Evil. Epstein, this person evil, this person good. Clinton evil, Obama evil. Nobody's thinking anymore. Because everyone is trapped with their prejudgments. Prejudgments, prejudice. Warrantless, baseless prejudice. I'm not going to finish the rest of the show. I actually want to start a new TV series with my best friend in the world. The article that I wanted to go on reading would have actually been, and I will probably do it tomorrow evening. I don't know. The gulp heard around the world. This is why Koprowski gulped down that first dose of polio virus. He probably wasn't even sure it was going to actually create protection against polio, but I think he did know that polio or the childhood paralysis would not occur if people were simply drinking their vaccines. There would be no reaction, no chain reaction that eventually led to the spinal cord becoming inflamed, nerves having autoimmunity, etc., if stuff wasn't being injected into the body. Wow. Wow. So smart. No surprise, Joshua Lederberg, Esther Lederberg, you know, the guy who created the term microbiome and understand about transfection. No wonder why they got along, Lederberg and Koprowski. No wonder why they were the two main speakers at the 1963 Man and His Future conference in England. No wonder why. That's how long they've been trying to get these vaccines transitioned over and trying to kick the can. They've been kicking the can for, what's that, 65 years they've been kicking that can. It's different people. They've had to go out and buy new shoes. The kids are kicking the can. Their grandkids are now kicking the can. I can't believe there's even a can left to kick. Anyways, that's my show for today, guys. Thank you. Take care. Keep questioning it. Prove yourself wrong. Become the person with the next best idea out in front. Love you very much. God bless.